Women are powerful and have accomplished great things. Yet, sometimes we suffer from self-doubt, fear, and limiting beliefs. We often believe that we are not good enough. These negative beliefs stop us from achieving our goals. Welcome to Sprinting to Success, a podcast dedicated to women who have experienced struggles, yet found ways to step into their power, their greatness, and learn to embrace challenges. These women will share their stories and give you insights to help you on your path so you can follow your dreams. And now, here's your host, Esme Lawrence.
Welcome. This episode is sponsored by my co-author course. I'm looking for 10 to 16 writers for my book, Step Into Your Power. You write your story, or I will interview you and turn your interview into your story. Use your story, only 4,000 words, to inspire others, speak on stage, do workshops, or become an authority. Contact Esme today at esmelawrence.com. Thank you so much. And now, my guest has been an educator for 20 years and a classroom teacher for 10 years. She equipped heroic teachers with an effective literacy program for remediating dyslexia so they can close the achievement gap, stop the school to prison pipeline, and prepare students for success in school and in life. She's here today to share with us how to help dyslexic students win. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Marianne Cintron. Dr. Marianne Cintron, thank you so much for joining us on Sprinting to Success podcast.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so excited. So tell me a little about yourself as a child.
Okay, well, I was one of 7 children.
Wow.
And which we pretty much had to fend for our parents' attention. I spent a lot of time sharing the chores and relieving my mom of that, as we would all take turns cooking and cleaning and folding clothes. My father was very supportive, but lost his eyesight when he was about 65.
Oh.
And he always instilled in us compassion for people with disabilities because he had a disability. He was diabetic, and gradually his eyesight was going away. But he always had a lot of faith for the future and a lot of vision for painting the house when he was blind. Or he used to talk about one day there's going to be a LASIK surgery to help people who can't see. And he never thought we'd be living, well, he said we'd be living in the day to see that. Too bad it didn't happen when he was alive.
Right.
And my mom lived to be 85 years old. She taught me a lot in my home, how to knit and crochet and sew. She taught me all the domestic skills.
Right.
And none of my siblings really wanted to go to college, but I was pretty motivated to go to college. And I think because a lot of my peers in high school wanted to go to college.
Right. So let's go back to your childhood. So what kind of struggles did you have? Obviously having, really good family, your mom, your dad who likes to help others. So what struggles did you have there when you were young?
Well, I was always very talkative. So I think I got a lot of C's and B's in reading and writing, just talking a lot. But, I had a pretty successful childhood. I was very friendly and outgoing, and I got along with the girls and the guys. And when I was in high school, I was a cheerleader. And one of the struggles I did have was losing a 2-year-old sister who got run over by a car, and losing my brother who took his life with drugs.
Wow.
And so I don't know how that impacted my brain in high school for memory and stuff. But we had those crises, and I saw my parents have to work together and get through those crises as a couple. And then I saw how it affected the other siblings.
Right.
So anyway, but I had some peers who were very supportive and people motivated to go to college. And I just I think, clung to the vision that they had too. We were pretty broke as kids. My because my dad was sick a lot with his diabetes, my mom had to go to work, and she actually worked in the convent.
Wow.
and the where the priests, we were raised Catholic, so I went to Catholic school for 12 years, and she worked a lot in the rectory and did the ironing and the cleaning, and worked really hard to bring some income in for the family. And then she ended up working at Lockheed and had a really good job at Lockheed before she retired.
Lockheed West is a hospital, or?
Lockheed Burbank, where
Okay, I
they
don't.
build, yeah, Lockheed in Burbank.
I don't know. I'm in Canada. You're in the States. So
Oh,
explain.
oh, oh.
Explain. Yeah, explain why that is.
Lockheed is aerospace. So
Oh,
there's
okay.
General Dynamics and Lockheed's. They would build parts of airplanes, I guess. Yeah,
Okay. Okay. I see.
parts
So
of
she worked
airplanes.
hard. She worked hard for the
She
family.
sure did. Yeah.
Yeah. She and your dad, even though your dad was blind, he
My
was
dad
still.
was he was a jack of all trades. He started as a fuller brushman, and then he became a salesman, and then he became he was a realtor, and then he was an insurance broker, and he just, you know, tried everything that worked together to be successful. And he used to take us on his open houses and show us the beautiful homes, having the dream that one day we would live in a beautiful home.
Yes.
And he would get involved politically, and he would get us involved with the politics that were his interest. And whenever there were drives for the blind, he would have us pass out the little white candy canes, red and white candy canes, to help families who had people losing their eyeyesight.
Yeah.
So he was very involved in the community.
Right. He has a good heart. You
He did.
both your mom and dad. I love that. So what were some of the struggles that you had as an adult, now as a young adult?
Okay. Well, you know, I wanted to get married pretty young, and I think my biggest struggle was not meeting Mr. Right until I was in my 30s.
Why did you want to get married when you were young?
Well, because my mom was teaching me all these homemaker skills.
Oh, yes.
And I was ready to cook and just be a wife. I just always thought the wife was a nice role. And I pursued education because that wasn't happening. And I never dreamed that when I got my bachelor's in 1979, I never dreamed I'd go on to get 2 masters and 2 credentials and then a doctorate.
Woohoo! I love that.
I've been married 30 years. I never imagined all that.
Right. Oh, so you found your man when you were 30 years old. Is that correct?
That's right.
Right. And married for 30 years.
That's right.
That is awesome.
Isn't
I
that
love
funny?
that.
Yeah.
I love that. So now I know you're an advocate for teachers teaching students that has dyslexia. So explain, what is dyslexic? What is it?
Okay, so dyslexia is have difficulty putting sounds together. They don't recognize that what we call phonemic awareness, what letters belong to what sounds. So how I like to describe it is, imagine a person with dyslexia is reading from the right side of the brain when the language center is in the left side of the brain. So the right side of the brain will send over the wrong words to the left side of the brain. So when they read, instead of seeing, they read farm, but the brain will send from. Or they see girl and the brain will send grill. It just, the right side of the brain is sending over the wrong message.
Right.
And then also the central part of the brain, the corpus callosum, serves like a lazy referee. So when messages are sent for reading, crossing the brain, the auditory processing is very slow as well. So people who have dyslexia, you can see it in their reading. Usually they leave the room, or they dodge reading, or they have their head held down when they're asked who can read. They don't want to read. They don't enjoy reading. And when they read, you'll see their peers trying to help them with the words. They really struggle with sounding those words out. And even teachers will jump in and help the kids with the reading.
Right.
When they write, they often will forget capitalization. They don't put punctuation in. They'll misplace letters, and they'll omit letters and syllables. And their writing looks like alien writing, if you would. Mm-hmm. If you teachers have to ask them to read to them, what did you write?
Right.
And we were taught, if we have students do that, go ahead and write what they meant to write. and you'll recognize they may have a beginning sound right, but the rest of the letters are wrong. So they really need a specific type of reading structure, and I'll tell you a little bit about that later.
Right. So then what drove you, what passion drove you to start working with teachers to educate students with dyslexia? Because you were an educator.
Well, when I became a mom and I was an at-home mom and my kids were in 1st and 3rd grade, I started sitting in my daughter's 1st grade class, and I was a room mom. And I would see her teach her how to read. And it was phenomenal because phonics was a new language to me almost. Even though I was taught it in elementary school, it had been quite a while, 30 years. So I just thought her teacher was a hero. But my daughter had to stay after school a couple days a week for maybe a half a year and get practice with phonics. And my daughter's a nurse now, so she didn't have dyslexia, but she struggled with phonics. And then I remembered my son from 1st to 2nd grade, he had to go to summer school because his teacher was concerned that he wasn't going to be successful in 2nd grade. And I was thinking, wow, my kids have a secure, stable home and they're not dyslexic because I can work with them at home. What about those kids who don't have those parents at home to help them? So that was the first passion in my heart, to go back to school and get a credential and a master's. And I worked in a couple of districts, and then I realized I was starting to have a passion for the kids who struggled with reading. It wasn't just to help kids in general, but reading specifically. So I went back to school and I got a credential in special ed and a special ed master's. And that's when I learned from my professor to join 2 organizations. One was the Association of Ed Therapists, and one was the International Dyslexia Association, of which I'm now a board member in the Tri-County branch.
Right.
So that's where I first started learning about dyslexia. And then fast forward, I started learning about Orton and Gillingham, who created a multisensory reading program. And I learned about the value of music to retrain the brain when you're teaching kids phonics. So that was my passion.
Right.
So I was seeing success with students using music with the phonics-based reading program. I was seeing progress of 1 to 3 years gains in only 6 weeks.
Wow. Now why is that?
Okay, so when you are teaching phonics, when you send music in the left ear, it's going to cross to the right side of the brain and give that right angular gyrus something it likes to do. Remember I was talking about how it would take over the reading?
Right.
Well, now it's not. Now it's enjoying the music. So I would just play classical music. And when you put the spelling exercises in the room, it crosses over to the left side of the brain and starts developing that left angular gyrus like Pilates. It starts developing it as a language center. So when students see the letters ED, they know, is it a past tense or is it a part of a word like fed? When they see the letter double before they add ing, running, they're going to learn the rule. So when you teach a phonics-based reading program, you're teaching, okay, this is the Orton-Gillingham model. It has to be hands-on, kinesthetic, has to be auditory, has to be visual. We call that multisensory, but it also has to be structured, sequential, and cumulative. It's got to be systematic. So it's got to be the right combination of components for a reading program. So I developed a reading program that follows that model. It's called Step-by-Step Reading. And I also developed a music app. So the music app is called Dunking Dyslexia. It has music played in the left ear and spelling exercises in the right ear. So with my reading program, it's 9 steps, and the app is used at the very last step. So when the kids are taking their spelling test, they're going to be spelling words that they've already sounded out, seen in a workbook, read in a phonics reader, and now they're writing what they've been learning. And when you teach with a multisensory program, you're working with the student's strengths as well as addressing the weaknesses.
Right. So what's the correlation between students who don't learn to read by grade 3 or grade 4 in relation to going to jail? Is there a correlation?
There
To,
is. Yes, so 65.9% of students fail to reach grade level reading by 4th grade. And they're the kids who are at risk of dropping out of high school and going to prison.
wow.
There's a state back east that looks at the illiteracy rate of 3rd graders to determine how many prisons to build.
Oh, that's
And
sad.
yeah, and what's really ridiculous is in California, general ed students are bringing in $13,000 per student. Special ed students are bringing in twice that, so $26,000 per year. And prisons are bringing in $42,000 per inmate, okay, per year. So what the statistics are saying is that 85% of people in prison have dyslexia.
Wow, that is
So
sad.
if we can address it young, we're going to build their self-esteem. We're going to teach them to read. There's another statistic about in the special ed environment, there's a category called specific learning, SLD, specific learning disability. The kids with ADHD, kids with other issues going on. But 85% of those children in special ed have dyslexia.
Wow.
So imagine the saving of that child's self-esteem if we could address that in the special ed and have them exit special ed, leave that room for the kids who really need it. And imagine the tax dollar savings we would be having if we could exit these kids from special ed and keep them out of prison.
Oh, definitely. I mean, the money that the government will save when you invest the money into the young children in grades 1, 2, 3, and so then that way they feel better about themselves. So when you look at kids who are dyslexic, what kind of when they can't read or they're slow at reading or writing, how does it make them feel? Like, what do you see? How do they express that?
Well, I always ask the families when I speak to Rotaries and Kiwanis and Chambers, what does reading success look like? So I would say, how many grandparents and parents, have children who like to go to the library? They like to read. They like to tell you what they're reading and share their books with friends. Well, reading success is that, but it's also achieving A's and B's in reading. When I ask people how many ever got a C- in a class that was really difficult, and they were just so glad that they got the C- and then I'm done with it. Let me just pass it. Well, if you're getting a C- in something you need to continue with, a C- is going to mean you're going to be struggling as you pursue and get along. So proficiency is a C- or above. So there's an association called the NAEP, National Association of Educational Progress. People knowledge base like to hear that.
Right.
They want to know that they look at the reading scores of 4th graders and 8th graders to see how we're doing. In spite of a mandate that was signed by our governor in California, Governor Brown, in 2015, schools were supposed to assess for dyslexia and provide intervention by the 2017-18 school year. Well, that hasn't been done. So our grades are dropping. 8th graders have dropped 3%. 4th graders have dropped 1% since 2017. And even though those are small percentages, we're already hovering at a basic level. And California is one of the lowest states in the nation. And Los Angeles County is one of the lowest counties in the state, hovering below basic, which is the B level.
Why are they not addressing this?
Well, there's four things that I can pinpoint that teachers just aren't being trained to work with dyslexic children. There's not enough budget to address, have staff developments or professional developments. When the teachers don't know how to recognize dyslexia, and when they do, they don't know what to do to help the kids.
Right.
So as a result, that's why the kids are having that low self-esteem. They're acting out, they have bad behavior, and they're dropping out of high school, going to prisons.
Wow. Pipeline to prison when it can be easily solved.
That's right, and it doesn't have to be that way. So if people will think of a literacy program, we need to provide an affordable and an accelerated reading program. So can I share what I've developed?
Yes, please.
Well, I
Yes.
talked about the reading program is 9 steps. I can train a teacher in one day, and they could be working with dyslexic children the next week. All we have to do is get things in place.
Right.
And my trainings, I'm looking for 10 teachers at a time, so I can train 10 and get them out. I'm looking, when I work for sponsorship, I'm looking for people that want to train sponsor teachers in their community, and I want to help teachers in the public, in the private, and in the charter schools.
Right.
What I'm hearing now is college programs are just starting to be developed. They're very expensive, and they're about a 3-year program.
Wow.
So those are fine if teachers want to invest in those kind of programs, and they'll get special certifications and, you know, keep tallies of all the students they're spending hours with. Well, I've been there and I've done that. When I was a member of the Association of Ed Therapists, I did that. I got that certification. I tallied the hours and hundreds of hours spent with students. But I'm saying there's a fast way to train teachers, and they can be working with students the next week. And it's using the music with an Orton Gillingham-based reading program.
Wow. And I love the fact that you developed that, because I mean, it's actually a lot cheaper for your teachers to actually go through your program.
That's right.
You know, and so then you can work with dyslexic students the next day.
That's
you know,
right.
So your program is it's a nonprofit.
Correct.
Right. So then
That's
how could
right.
people, if they want to work with you, what would they do? What should they do?
Okay, so they can go to my website. It's www.dyslexia-solutions.com. And I'll spell dyslexia, Dyslexia.
Right.
Hyphen solutions with an S at the end.com. They can click on emailing me. They can let me know if they want more information, if they want a phone call, I can do a Zoom call with them, and I can do a training, and I'll travel across the nation to do trainings.
Right. Hear that, teachers out there? If you you work with dyslexic students, please get in touch with Dr. Marianne Cintron, because she is awesome. So Dr. Marianne Cintron, tell me about your book.
Okay, so my book was published last year, or 2018. We're already in the new year.
Right.
It's called A Message of Hope: How Music Enhances Reading for Dyslexic Children. And what it is 17 case studies of students I worked with music and without music. 2 of the highlights in my book, I talk about an 8-year-old an 8th grader in a low-income at-risk district who was being raised by her grandfather. Her mom was in prison. And when we met him, he said, so after 2 weeks, he started noticing already that her self-esteem was improving. She was feeling better about going to school, and she was getting along with her siblings. Well, after 6 weeks, when I showed him her results, she was a highly intelligent, and she had made 3 years gains in reading vocabulary, reading fluency, and comprehension. And he started weeping. And
Wow.
He said, "This is amazing. This is a miracle." He said, "Our home used to be a battlefield, and now she gets along with us. She enjoys going to school. She's doing her homework. You know, detentions have dropped off." He said, "Are you a doctor?" And that was one of the impressions that spoke to me to get my doctorate. And then another situation that I write about is I worked in middle school. After I got my doctorate, I actually worked for 4.5 years back in the classroom. And I was teaching a lot of math. I was supposed to teach a little bit of reading, but I was given a lot of math to teach. So I was teaching special ed math for 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. One of my 7th graders he wanted to use music in his left ear, and I said that would be great. So he used music, and when he wasn't using music, he really struggled. And when he did use music, it just helped him. He said he was dyslexic and he was ADHD. He took Ritalin.
Double whammy.
Yeah, he was an adopted boy. He said, "When I take the Ritalin, it calms me down, but the music helps me learn."
Yeah.
So we had the music written into his IEP, which is his individual education plan. And he had music all through high school to help him graduate successfully. So my book talks about stories like that. And then I also have application of the scientific background in behind the science. So let me share with you a little bit about Dr. Sperry. Dr. Roger Sperry did the split brain theory in the 1960s. He was a neuroscientist. He severed the central part of the brain called the corpus callosum.
Right.
So it was inactive, and then he worked with the left and the right sides of the brain independently with these seizure patients, and it was called the split brain theory. He won a Nobel Prize 20 years later for his findings in the 1960s. And he challenged teachers when he had his conferences, if educators would listen to this knowledge about the left and right hemisphere, and what, not including the corpus callosum, he probably didn't know what that meant in the classroom, because we certainly can't sever a brain of a student.
Right.
But we can put music in the left ear and spelling exercises in the right ear, and we're working with the individual parts of the brain, and we're bypassing the corpus callosum. There's
Right.
something called a dichotic method of learning, which is very popular, but what we're specifically doing with language is enhancing lateralization. So we're enhancing the lateralization of the brain, and it's based on a man who won a Nobel Prize for his findings. So it's
Wow.
definitely research-based.
20 years later, a Nobel Prize.
Isn't that amazing? Yes.
That is amazing. But I'm really glad that we actually have this research, and
Yes.
so students who are struggling, and if so tell me, I'm interested. So parents, what can parents do? I mean, how are they going to know that their kids are struggling? Because sometimes some parents are working so hard, they don't even know that their kids are struggling in school.
Well,
So,
because I was a classroom teacher for 10 years, I've been in education 20, but I was in the classroom for 10. And I know that there are students who take a lot of the teacher's time to get successful, to get that C. So if a parent knows that their child is struggling with reading, taking an exorbitant amount of time to understand, the red flags are when the kids are young, if they're not rhyming by the time they're 4 years old, if they have trouble with rhymes, that's a red flag. If students don't know how to drop off syllables and say the rest of the word, or drop off a letter and say the rest of the word, those are phonological awareness activities that we do that dyslexic kids really struggle with, but that's how we retrain the brain. So parents can actually come together and talk to their principals. This is happening in a private school recently because a parent of a dyslexic child called me. In the private school, they're paying tuition. So the school boards don't really want parents paying more. But if parents wanted to pay to sponsor a teacher, it costs, well, they would have to call me to see what that costs. I won't put the costs on this webcast.
right.
And then also, because what I do when I speak to Rotaries and Kiwanis, I fundraise. So I'm looking for business owners that want their businesses to be sponsors and partners to help these teachers be trained.
Right. So Dr. Marianne Cintron, what would you like to say to our audience today?
Well, I want to thank them for listening, and thank them for listening all the way through. And I want to thank you too, Esme, for letting me speak. I would just say, be advocates for your kids. The schools need your help, and they need your help, and I need your help. So if you know places, Rotaries, Kiwanis, Chamber of Commerce's, that would allow me an opportunity to speak and present, that's a way I can get my message out. But also you can go to your school principals, your special ed directors, let them know you heard this podcast and that you would like them to listen to what is being said. I've spoken to directors of special ed schools, and they're very interested to come and having me come and speak to the teachers to see if those teachers want to be on board to be trained for helping dyslexic children. The challenge that I know schools have is there's so many new pilots, and teachers want to wait till this new introduction of curriculum sees it through 1 to 2 to 3 years, and maybe they're tired of seeing another curriculum. But this is a training that is easy to learn, and the thing is, a special ed, someone who's trained in this could work with up to 120 to 140 students a day.
Wow.
So because I started working with 3rd graders, 4th graders, and 5th graders, suddenly I'm teaching middle school. And then I was co-teaching high school. So what I learned to help kids with dyslexia, that transferred into all those students over those years. And so they're training a teacher, but they're training many kids that can multiply to be thousands over a lifetime. So
Right.
I just appreciate their advocacy for their own child, but they're going to help other children too. So get on my website, email me, ask for more information.
Ladies
That would
and
be the best thing.
gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, you heard Dr. Marianne Cintron. She talks about, helping students with dyslexia. If you're a teacher and you want to help students with dyslexia, please contact her, support her, because she's doing amazing work. And on that note, I want to say thank you for listening to Sprinting to Success podcast. Dr. Marianne Cintron, thank you. That was amazing.
Thank you so much.
That was
Okay.
amazing. And to learn more about Dr. Marianne Cintron, please go to esmelawrence.com. Thank you and have an amazing day.
Thank you for listening to Sprinting to Success with your host, Esme Lawrence. Please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review this show on iTunes. For more information about Esme and to hear other episodes of the show, go to esmelawrence.com. The information in this podcast is not intended as a substitute for professional or medical treatment or advice. Always seek advice from your healthcare provider.